Commander Sarah Chen stood at the edge of the massive hangar bay, watching the final preparations for the most important mission in galactic history. The sleek vessel before her, the Prometheus, represented 5 years of joint engineering between 7 different species. Its hull gleamed with advanced Zentari metals, its engines hummed with Catherian fusion technology, and its navigation systems contained the best artificial intelligence the Vex Collective could offer. What it didn't contain, according to the crew manifest in her hands, was supposed to be any humans. "You cannot be serious," came a voice behind her. Sarah turned to face Captain Zexhai, a tall Zentari with 4 arms and skin that shifted from blue to purple when he was agitated. Right now it was practically violet. "The Council approved this?" Sarah held up her official authorization pad, the holographic seal of the Intergalactic Exploration Council glowing bright green. "They did. I'm your new systems specialist." The hangar fell silent except for the hum of machinery. Workers from different species, the insectoid crick with their clicking mandibles, the ethereal lumens with their translucent bodies, the massive rock-like Gornoth, all stopped what they were doing to stare. "A human," whispered Dr. Vextar, the mission's chief scientist. Her serpentine head swayed as she spoke, and her multiple eyes blinked in what Sarah recognized as disbelief. "They're sending a human on the Kepler 442b expedition." Kepler 442b. Even thinking the name sent chills down Sarah's spine. The planet had been discovered 50 years ago, a world that defied all known physics. It existed in a zone where space itself seemed unstable, where ships vanished without trace, and where the few automated probes that survived sent back readings that made no sense. 3 previous missions had attempted to reach it. None returned. "With respect, Commander Chen," Captain Zexhai's voice dripped with barely concealed contempt. "This mission requires the finest minds and the most advanced beings in the galaxy. We cannot afford passengers." A ripple of laughter spread through the assembled crew. Sarah had expected this. Humans were the newest species in the galactic community, admitted only 15 years ago after proving they possessed faster-than-light travel. In galactic terms, they were infants. Most of the species present had been exploring space for thousands of years. "I understand your concern," Sarah replied calmly. She had practiced this speech. "But perhaps you should review my qualifications before making assumptions." She activated her personal datapad, projecting her credentials into the air. The holographic display showed her education at the Sol Naval Academy, her doctoral work in xenotechnology at New Geneva University, and her service record from the Human Defense Corps. "Impressive for a human," Dr. Vextar said, though her tone suggested she found it anything but. "But what could your species possibly contribute to this mission that we lack?" Sarah had wondered that herself when the Council first approached her. The Zentari were master engineers. The Vex possessed computational abilities that made human supercomputers look like pocket calculators. The crick could survive in environments that would kill most other species instantly. The lumens could manipulate energy with their thoughts. What did humans bring to this table? "Adaptability," she said simply. This earned more laughter. Engineer Clixist, a crick whose carapace was decorated with tool attachments, clicked his mandibles in amusement. "Adaptability? We have environmental suits for any condition. We have technology to reshape matter itself. What could your primitive adaptability offer?" Sarah didn't answer immediately. Instead, she walked over to one of the loading stations where supplies were being prepared for the journey. She picked up a standard Zentari food pack, designed to provide optimal nutrition for their metabolism. "This is perfectly engineered," she said, turning it over in her hands. "Precise nutritional balance, long shelf life, efficient packaging. It's what any logical species would create." She set it down and picked up a human MRE, a meal ready to eat that looked crude compared to the sleek Zentari design. "This, on the other hand, is what humans bring to survival. It's not perfect. It's not even particularly good. But it works in temperatures from -40 to +60 Celsius. It can be eaten hot or cold. The packaging can be used as a signaling device, a makeshift tool, or emergency shelter material. It's not optimal for any single situation, but it works in almost any situation." The crowd was listening now, their mockery replaced by mild curiosity. When the Zentari colony on Zerion Prime faced that unexpected volcanic winter, they nearly starved waiting for supply ships because their food systems required specific storage conditions. Sarah continued. When the Vex encountered that computer virus that shut down their processing centers, they couldn't function until it was purged. When the Crick exploration team got trapped in those acid storms on Beta Centauri III, they had to wait for rescue because their specialized equipment couldn't adapt to the new conditions. She looked around the hangar, meeting as many eyes as she could. Every species here is better than humans at specific things. You're stronger, smarter, more advanced. But humans? We're the species that survived ice ages with stone tools. We're the ones who turned every disaster into an opportunity to learn something new. We don't wait for the perfect solution. We make do with what we have and figure out the rest as we go. Captain Zexhi's skin was still purple, but a different shade now, one that suggested thought rather than anger. And you believe this? Making do will be valuable on a mission where 3 previous expeditions vanished completely? Captain, Sarah said, her voice steady despite the nervous energy coursing through her. When we reach Kepler 442b, and everything goes wrong and something will go wrong, you'll want someone on your crew who specializes in impossible situations. The hangar remained quiet for a long moment. Finally, Captain Zexhi gestured toward the ship with one of his 4 arms. Very well, Commander Chen. Welcome to the most dangerous mission in galactic history. Try not to get us all killed with your human creativity. As Sarah walked toward the Prometheus, she heard the whispers following her. Some were cruel, others merely skeptical. A few, she noticed, sounded almost curious. She understood their doubt. In their position, she would probably feel the same way. But as she stepped aboard the ship that would carry them into the unknown, Sarah Chen carried something her crewmates didn't realize they lacked. The absolute certainty that when everything fell apart, humans had a way of putting things back together in ways no one else would think to try. The mission to Kepler 442b was about to begin, and Sarah had a feeling they would all learn exactly what human adaptability really meant. 3 days into the journey, Sarah had settled into a routine that kept her mostly invisible to the rest of the crew. She arrived early for her shifts, completed her tasks without fanfare, and spent her free time in her quarters reviewing mission data. The Prometheus was a masterpiece of engineering, but working with her crewmates felt like navigating a minefield. The ship's common area buzzed with conversation as Sarah entered for the evening meal. Conversations stopped mid-sentence as she approached the food dispensers. She had grown used to this reaction, but it still stung. Commander Chen, Dr. Vextar acknowledged with a slight nod of her serpentine head. How are you finding our journey? Educational, Sarah replied, loading her tray with what the computer had determined was nutritionally appropriate for human consumption. The food looked like colored paste but smelled acceptable. I imagine everything must seem quite advanced compared to human technology. Engineer Clixist clicked from across the room. Several crew members chuckled. Sarah had learned that Cricks were extremely literal beings who spoke their thoughts without considering how others might interpret them. She chose to take his comment as curiosity rather than insult. Actually, I've been impressed by how different approaches can achieve similar results, she said, settling at an empty table. Your power distribution systems use crystalline matrices to regulate flow, while human ships use adaptive algorithms. Both work, but in completely different ways. Navigation Officer Thyron, a lumen whose body glowed softly in the dim lighting, pulsed brighter with what Sarah had learned indicated surprise. You understand our power systems? I've been studying them. The efficiency is remarkable, though I noticed some interesting redundancies in sectors 7 through 12. Captain Zexhi looked up from his meal, his skin shifting to a greenish hue that Sarah hadn't seen before. What kind of redundancies? Sarah hesitated. She hadn't meant to criticize their engineering. It's probably nothing, just that the backup systems have backup systems, which seem to have their own backup systems. It's very thorough. Thorough? Dr. Vexistar's multiple eyes blinked in sequence. That redundancy is necessary for safety. If one system fails, the next one takes over. I understand that, Sarah interrupted gently. It's smart design. I was just thinking that in a critical situation, all those safety checks might slow down emergency responses. On human ships, we usually build systems that can be bypassed manually if needed. The room fell silent. Engineer Clix's mandibles clicked rapidly, which Sarah had learned meant he was either very amused or very agitated. You would remove safety protocols? He asked. Not remove. Override. Sometimes the safe choice isn't the survival choice. Captain Zexhai set down his eating utensil with enough force to make a sharp clicking sound. Commander Chen, those redundancies have prevented countless disasters across the galaxy. Perhaps human ships accept more risk because your technology is less sophisticated. Sarah nodded slowly. Perhaps. Or maybe we accept more risk because sometimes risk is the only way forward. Before anyone could respond, the ship's communication system activated with a gentle chime. All senior staff to the bridge. We are approaching the boundary of the Kepler 442b system. The bridge of the Prometheus was a circular chamber with workstations arranged in concentric rings. At the center, Captain Zexhai occupied the command position, surrounded by holographic displays showing ship status, star charts, and sensor readings. Sarah took her position at the system's monitoring station, feeling the weight of everyone's attention. Report, Captain Zexhai ordered. We are 3 hours from the system boundary. Navigation Officer Thyron announced, her luminescent body pulsing with concentration. All previous missions lost contact at approximately this distance. Dr. Vextar manipulated her console with lightning speed, her serpentine fingers dancing across the controls. Sensors show nothing unusual. Standard stellar formation, predicted planetary positions, normal electromagnetic signatures, which is exactly what the other missions reported, Engineer Clixes noted, his voice carrying an edge of nervousness, right before they vanished. Sarah studied her displays, watching the cascading data streams that monitored every system on the ship. Everything appeared normal, but something felt wrong. It was nothing she could quantify, just an instinct developed from years of space travel. Captain, she said quietly, recommend we reduce speed and increase sensor sweep intervals. Based on what data? Captain Zexhai asked, his skin shifting to that purple shade she had learned meant irritation. No specific data, just something feels off. The bridge erupted in a mixture of clicks, hisses, and what sounded like sighs of exasperation. Humans and their feelings, Dr. Vextar muttered. We make decisions based on logic and evidence, not emotional responses. Sarah felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment, but before she could respond, the ship's sensors began emitting a series of warning tones. Contact, Thyron called out, her body blazing with sudden brightness. Unknown energy signature detected at the edge of sensor range. All displays shifted to show the same image, a massive structure floating in the void between stars. It was clearly artificial, composed of interlocking geometric shapes that hurt to look at directly. The structure seemed to fold in on itself in ways that defied three-dimensional space. By the 7 moons, Captain Zexhai breathed. What is that? Unknown, Dr. Vextar replied, her voice tight with concentration. Energy readings are impossible. It's showing power signatures greater than a small star, but it's cold. No thermal output at all. Could it be a remnant from one of the previous missions? Engineer Clixist asked. No, Sarah said, studying her displays with growing concern. It's too old. The metal composition readings suggest it's been here for thousands of years, maybe longer. Captain Zexhai turned to face her. How can you determine age from energy signatures? It's not just the signatures. Look at the way space curves around it. Whatever that thing is, it's been warping local spacetime for a very long time. The distortion patterns are settled, mature. This isn't recent construction. For the first time since boarding the ship, Sarah saw something other than dismissal in her crewmate's eyes. Dr. Vextar was nodding slowly, her multiple eyes focused on the same readings Sarah had interpreted. She's right, the scientist confirmed. The gravitational lensing effects do suggest extended temporal presence. So what happened to the previous missions? Navigation Officer Thyron asked, her glow dimming with what Sarah recognized as fear. Sarah studied the structure more carefully, noting how its impossible geometry seemed to shift slightly when she wasn't looking directly at it. Maybe they found it. Maybe it found them. Recommendations? Captain Zexhai asked, and Sarah was surprised to realize he was addressing her. We proceed, but carefully. Whatever that thing is, it's been waiting here longer than any of our species have been spacefaring. We're not the first to find it, but we might be the first to understand what it is. And if it destroyed the other missions? Sarah looked around the bridge, meeting the eyes of beings who had spent the last 3 days treating her as a liability. Then we better make sure we're smarter than they were. Captain Zexhai's skin rippled through several colors before settling on a steady blue-green that Sarah hadn't seen before. Very well. Reduce speed to 1/4 impulse. All departments implement enhanced monitoring protocols. And Commander Chen? Yes, sir. Keep watching those systems. If any more of your human feelings tell you something is wrong, I want to know immediately. As the Prometheus crept forward into the unknown, Sarah felt the weight of 7 different species' survival pressing down on her shoulders. The structure ahead continued its impossible dance through folded space, and she couldn't shake the feeling that it was somehow aware of their approach. The real test was about to begin. The first sign of trouble came from the navigation system. "Captain," Thyron announced, her luminescent body flickering with distress patterns. "Our position doesn't match our projected coordinates. We should be 2 million kilometers from the structure, but sensors indicate we're only half that distance." Captain Zexhi's skin cycled through several shades of confusion. "Explain, I cannot." "According to our instruments, we've been traveling at 1/4 impulse for 47 minutes. The distance covered should be precise, but we're closer than we should be." Sarah felt that familiar knot of unease tightening in her stomach. She ran diagnostics on her systems, checking and double-checking the readings. "Captain, I'm showing similar anomalies. Our power consumption matches the projected usage for our supposed location, but our actual proximity to the structure suggests we've been moving faster than our engines should allow." Dr. Vextar manipulated her console frantically, her serpentine movements becoming increasingly agitated. Space-time distortion around the structure is more severe than initial readings indicated. "It appears to be affecting local physics in ways we don't understand." "Meaning?" Captain Zexhi demanded. "Meaning the normal laws of motion don't apply here. Distance and time are being manipulated somehow." As if responding to their discovery, the impossible structure began to change. Its geometric surfaces shifted and flowed like liquid metal, rearranging themselves into new configurations that made Sarah's eyes water when she tried to follow the movement. "It's responding to our presence," Engineer Clixist observed, his mandibles clicking rapidly. "The energy signatures are increasing exponentially." "All stop," Captain Zexhi ordered. "Full reverse, take us back to safe distance." Thyron's hands danced over her controls, but her glow dimmed to almost nothing. "Sir, engines are not responding. We're still moving toward the structure." "That's impossible," Dr. Vextar said. "Emergency protocols should—" She was cut off as every screen on the bridge suddenly went black. Then, one by one, they began displaying the same image. A slowly rotating symbol that hurt to look at directly, composed of lines that seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions. "What is that?" Captain Zexhi whispered. Sarah stared at the symbol, feeling a strange recognition tugging at the back of her mind. "It's a message. Or maybe a test." "How could you possibly know that?" Dr. Vextar snapped. "Because it's changing based on our responses. Watch." Sarah pointed to the display. When you spoke, the rotation speed increased. When the captain whispered, the lines became more complex. "It's reacting to us." The structure was now close enough to fill their main view screen. Up close, its impossible nature was even more disturbing. Surfaces folded through dimensions that shouldn't exist, creating angles that made normal space look broken around them. "Sir," Engineer Clixist reported, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. "We're being pulled in by some kind of gravitational field, but it's not following standard physics. The attraction is increasing faster than our mass and distance would predict." "Options?" Captain Zexhi asked. "Emergency jump to faster than light," Thyron suggested. "Negative. The space-time distortions would tear us apart the moment we tried to engage FTL drives," Dr. Vextar replied. "Full power to engines? Break free through brute force?" Engineer Clixist offered. "We're already at full reverse power." "It's not enough." Sarah watched the readings cascade across her screen, noting patterns that her crewmates were missing. The pull isn't constant. It's pulsing in rhythm with that symbol. Every time the image completes a rotation, we jump forward about 3,000 kilometers. "So?" Dr. Vextar asked impatiently. "So it's not random. There's intelligence behind this. The structure isn't just pulling us in, it's bringing us in at a controlled rate. Like it wants to examine us without destroying us. Or it wants to preserve us for something worse," Captain Zexhi said grimly. The ship shuddered suddenly, and every console on the bridge began displaying warning messages simultaneously. Sarah's system diagnostics lit up like a Christmas tree with failure alerts. "Multiple system failures across all departments," she reported. "Life support is holding, but navigation, communications, and weapons are all showing critical errors. Repair them. Captain Zexhai ordered. I'm trying, but the failures don't make sense. It's like the systems are forgetting how to work. The computer keeps running diagnostics that report everything is normal, but nothing functions. Engineer Clix's ET's carapace was chattering with stress. This is beyond my experience. Our equipment is the most advanced in the galaxy. It should not be possible for it to simply stop working. Dr. Vextar was frantically calculating on her console. The energy field from the structure is interacting with our systems at the quantum level. It's not damaging them. It's changing the fundamental rules that govern how they operate. In language I can understand, Doctor, Captain Zexhai demanded. The structure is rewriting physics inside its influence zone. Our technology is based on universal constants, the speed of light, gravity, electromagnetic force. But those constants are being modified here. Our equipment was never designed to function in an environment where the basic rules of reality can change. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine as the implications sank in. That's what happened to the other missions. Their advanced technology became useless when they got close to the structure. The more sophisticated the system, the more it relied on those constants, the more it would be affected. Are you saying our ships are too advanced for this environment? Captain Zexhai asked. I'm saying maybe simple is better here. Basic mechanical systems, manual controls, analog instruments. Things that don't depend on complex physics to function. The crew stared at her as if she had suggested they navigate by throwing rocks. Commander Chen, Dr. Vextar said slowly, we cannot operate a starship with simple technology. We need our computers, our sensors, our... She was interrupted as the lights went out. Emergency power kicked in a moment later, bathing the bridge in a red glow. But Sarah could see that even the backup systems were struggling. Status indicators flickered erratically, and the steady hum of the ship's machinery was becoming irregular. How long before life support fails? Captain Zexhai asked quietly. Engineer Clix's T checked his barely functioning console. If the degradation continues at this rate, 6 hours, maybe less. And we can't break free, we can't jump to FTL, and we can't call for help. The captain's skin had gone almost white. Are we going to be the fourth mission to vanish in this system? Sarah stared at the impossible structure filling their view screen. Its surface was covered in symbols now, thousands of them rotating and shifting in patterns that suggested meaning just beyond understanding. But as she watched, she began to notice something the others had missed. Captain, she said slowly, I don't think we're trapped. I think we're being invited. Invited? Dr. Vextar's voice rose to a hiss. To what, our destruction? No, to communicate. Sarah pointed to the view screen. Look at the patterns. They're not random. The symbols are moving in response to our actions, our conversations, even our biometric signatures. This structure, whatever it is trying to establish contact, but it doesn't understand our technology any more than we understand its methods. And the other missions? Sarah was quiet for a moment. Maybe they tried to fight it. Maybe they saw the technology failures and the changing physics as attacks instead of attempts at communication. If you're used to having all the answers, it might be hard to recognize when someone is trying to teach you something completely new. Captain Zexhai looked around his failing bridge. At crew members who represented the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy, all helpless in the face of something that operated by rules they had never encountered. What do you suggest, Commander? We stop trying to make our technology work in an environment it wasn't designed for. We adapt to the conditions we're in instead of trying to force the conditions to match our expectations. The ship shuddered again, and more systems went offline. In the growing darkness, the alien structure's glow became the only source of light visible through the view screen. How? Captain Zexhai asked. Sarah took a deep breath, knowing that her next words would either save them all or doom them. We do what humans do best. We improvise. Follow me, Sarah said, rising from her station as another cascade of system failures rippled through the bridge. Where? Captain Zexhai asked, but he was already moving. The ship was dying around them, and conventional solutions had failed completely. Sarah led them through darkened corridors lit only by failing emergency strips. The Prometheus groaned around them as unknown forces continued to play havoc with its systems. She could hear her crewmates breathing heavily behind her, some with fear, others with the effort of moving through corridors designed for multiple species. The maintenance bay, she explained as they walked. If we're going to survive this, We need tools that don't depend on complex physics to function. They entered a large chamber filled with equipment lockers and repair stations. Sarah immediately began pulling out items that looked primitive compared to the ship's usual technology. Manual torches that burned chemical fuel, mechanical measuring devices, tools that operated purely through leverage and human muscle power. "Commander Chen," Dr. Vextar said, her serpentine form coiling with agitation. "What exactly are you planning to accomplish with those?" Sarah held up a simple mirror. "Just polished metal, no electronics or sensors. Communication. If that structure is trying to talk to us but our technology keeps failing, maybe we need to respond in a language it can understand." Reflected light? Engineer Clixist clicked skeptically. "That's how primitives signal each other across distances." "Exactly." Sarah began gathering several mirrors of different sizes. No computers, no complex physics, just basic optics. Light bouncing off surfaces. If the structure is operating on different physical laws, something this simple might be the only thing that works consistently. Captain Zexhi's skin was cycling through colors rapidly, a sign of intense thought. "You want to use mirrors to signal an alien structure that can manipulate space-time itself? I want to try something that can't be improved by whatever is changing the physics around here. The simpler the tool, the less it depends on universal constants that might not be constant anymore." Sarah climbed up to one of the maintenance bay's external viewports, a simple transparent aluminum window that gave them a direct view of the structure. Up close it was even more magnificent and terrifying. Surfaces that shouldn't exist folded through spaces that hurt to perceive directly. "Help me position these mirrors," she said, beginning to arrange them to catch and redirect light from the ship's remaining functional illumination systems. Thyron floated over, her natural luminescence providing additional light. "Commander, even if this works, how do we know what message to send?" "We start simple. We establish that we're intelligent, that we can recognize patterns that we want to communicate." Sarah adjusted the first mirror. "Watch the structure's symbols. They pulse in patterns. We try to pulse back in the same patterns." She began reflecting light in rhythm with one of the simpler symbol rotations visible on the structure's surface. Flash, pause, flash, flash, longer pause, flash. Over and over. For several minutes, nothing happened except the continued degradation of their ship's systems. Then gradually, the structure's displays began to change. The symbol Sarah was mimicking grew brighter and began rotating faster. "It's responding," Dr. Vexatar breathed. "It's learning," Sarah corrected. "Look at the other symbols. They're shifting to simpler patterns, closer to what we can reproduce with basic light signals." Engineer Clixist moved to another viewport with a second mirror. "What should I signal?" "Try this pattern," Sarah said, demonstrating a simple mathematical sequence. 1 flash, then 2, then 3, then 5, then 8. The Fibonacci sequence, something that appeared throughout nature and might be recognizable to any intelligence. As Clixit began flashing the sequence, new symbols appeared on the structure's surface. These were different from the impossible geometry they'd seen before. Cleaner, more regular, definitely mathematical in nature. "Captain," Thyron called softly, "sensors show the gravitational field is stabilizing. We're no longer being pulled toward the structure." Captain Zexhi joined them at the viewport. "The communication is working?" "It's working enough to show good intention," Sarah said. "But we need more than light signals. We need to show we understand complex concepts." She looked around the maintenance bay, her eyes settling on a collection of spare parts and basic materials. "Dr. Vextar, what's the simplest way to demonstrate our understanding of physics?" I'm not sure what you mean." "Not quantum mechanics or faster than light theory. Basic physics. Gravity, momentum, cause and effect." Understanding dawned in the scientist's multiple eyes. "Mechanical demonstration. Physical actions that show we understand how objects interact." "Exactly." Sarah began gathering objects of different sizes and weights. "If the structure is having trouble understanding our technology, because it operates on different physical principles, maybe we show it the principles we both understand." She set up a simple pendulum using a wrench tied to a cable, then positioned mirrors to shine light on it as it swung. The pendulum's regular motion was reflected as pulses of light toward the structure. The response was immediate. New symbols appeared, these ones clearly depicting motion, trajectory, And time relationships by all the stars, Captain Zexai whispered. It understands physics demonstrations better than our sensor readings. Because physics demonstrations don't depend on advanced technology, Sarah explained while setting up more complex mechanical displays. A pendulum works the same way whether you understand quantum mechanics or not. Cause and effect, action and reaction, these are fundamental concepts that any intelligence would recognize. Engineer Clixist had begun creating his own demonstrations, using gears and levers to show mechanical advantage. Commander, this is brilliant. We're teaching it about us by showing it the basic principles we use to understand the universe. And it's teaching us too, Thyron added, pointing at the structure. Look how the symbols are organizing themselves. It's showing us its understanding of the same principles, but from a completely different perspective. The structure's surface was now covered with orderly displays that clearly showed mathematical relationships, physical laws, and what looked like star charts. Some of the displays showed familiar constellations, but from angles no known species had ever observed them. Those star positions, Dr. Vextar said, her voice filled with awe, they're showing us views of our galaxy from outside it. This structure has traveled far beyond the edge of known space. Or it's been here long enough to see the galaxy rotate to different positions, Sarah added quietly. Either way, we're talking to something very old and very experienced. New pattern appeared on the structure, a clear representation of their ship surrounded by energy fields that pulsed in rhythm with their failing systems. It's showing us our problem, Captain Zexai realized. It can see that our technology is being disrupted. Sarah studied the display carefully. More than that, look at these energy patterns around our ship. It's not showing random disruption. It's showing controlled modification. The structure isn't accidentally interfering with our systems. Then it's deliberately disabling us. Engineer Clixist asked, his mandibles clicking with renewed anxiety. No, Sarah said slowly. I think it's trying to help us, but it doesn't understand how our technology works any more than we understand how it manipulates space-time. It's like, imagine if you were trying to help someone whose equipment ran on a different type of electricity than you'd ever encountered. You might end up making things worse even with good intentions. She began setting up another demonstration, this one using simple electrical circuits with batteries and light bulbs. Technology so basic it operated on principles that had been understood for centuries. We show it how our systems work, she explained. Basic electricity, simple mechanical processes, straightforward cause and effect. If it understands these principles, maybe it can figure out how to stop interfering with our more complex technology. As Sarah connected wires and demonstrated how electrical current created light, the structure's displays shifted again. New symbols appeared that clearly represented energy flow, electrical circuits, and what looked like technical specifications. It's a fast learner, Thyron observed. It's been waiting, Sarah corrected, maybe for a very long time, waiting for someone to talk to it in a language it could understand. Suddenly the ship's lights flickered and came back to full power. System displays throughout the maintenance bay began showing normal readings. All systems are coming back online, Captain Zexai reported, checking a portable status display. Whatever it was doing to our technology, it's stopping. Sarah looked out at the structure, which was now displaying what could only be described as welcoming patterns. Complex but clearly organized symbols that pulsed with warm, steady light. Now comes the real test, she said. It understands we're intelligent, and it's fixed our immediate problem. But what does it want from us? And are we prepared for the answer? The answer came 3 hours later, as Sarah and her crewmates worked to decode the increasingly complex messages appearing on the structure's surface. The symbols had evolved from simple mathematics to detailed technical specifications, then to what appeared to be historical records. Commander Chen, Dr. Vextar called from her analysis station, her voice tight with excitement and fear. You need to see this. Sarah joined the scientist at her console, where she had been processing the symbol patterns through the ship's restored computer systems. The display showed a translation matrix that made Sarah's blood run cold. It's showing us the other missions, Dr. Vextar whispered. All of them. The screen filled with images that were clearly recognizable despite the alien representation. 3 different ship designs, each one advanced beyond anything currently in the galactic fleet. The structures were depicted approaching the alien construct just as the Prometheus had. But the endings of their stories were different. The first mission, Dr. Vextar continued, pointing to a series of symbols, tried to destroy the structure when their systems began failing. Their weapons had no effect and they were absorbed somehow. Absorbed? Captain Zexhai asked, his skin shifting to a pale green. Incorporated into the structure itself. Look, the display showed the ship being broken down and its materials integrated into the alien construct's impossibly complex geometry. The second mission tried to escape when they lost control of their systems. They activated their faster-than-light drives while still in the distortion field. Dr. Vexitar's multiple eyes blinked rapidly. The space-time disruption tore them apart instantly. Sarah studied the third sequence of symbols. And the last mission? They waited. They did nothing. Their systems failed completely. Life support went offline, and they died while the structure tried to communicate with them. The bridge fell silent except for the steady hum of restored machinery. Finally, Captain Zexhai spoke. So what makes us different? Why are we still alive? Sarah looked out at the structure, which continued to display its welcoming patterns. Because we talked back. We found a way to communicate that didn't depend on our failing technology. But why does it want to communicate? Engineer Clixist asked. What is it trying to tell us? As if responding to his question, the structure's displays shifted again. This time the symbols were clearly depicting star charts, but not current ones. The galactic arrangements showed positions from thousands, maybe millions of years ago. It's old, Sarah breathed. Incredibly old. And it's been alone for all that time. More symbols appeared, showing the structure traveling through space, visiting different star systems, always searching, always calling out. But the civilizations it encountered were either too primitive to respond or too advanced to understand its attempts at basic communication. It's a Voyager, Dr. Vextar realized, an explorer from some ancient civilization, still trying to make contact with intelligent life. Not just trying, Sarah corrected, watching new patterns emerge. Teaching. Look at these sequences. The display showed complex technical information, energy manipulation techniques, space-time mathematics, methods for faster-than-light travel that were completely different from anything the galactic species used. It's offering to share its knowledge, Thyron said, her luminescence brightening with excitement. Technologies that could revolutionize everything we understand about physics. But there's a problem, Sarah said quietly. The same problem that destroyed the other missions. She pointed to a new sequence of symbols that showed the teaching process. The structure would attempt to download information directly into the visiting ship's computer systems. But the advanced technology couldn't handle the massive data transfers while also dealing with the space-time distortions. Every time it tries to share what it knows, it overloads the systems it's trying to teach, Sarah explained. The more sophisticated the technology, the more catastrophic the failure. Captain Zexhai's skin cycled through several shades of understanding and concern. So we face the same choice as the others. Accept knowledge that will destroy us or refuse it and learn nothing. Not necessarily. Sarah was quiet for a moment studying the displays. What if we don't try to download the information directly into our computers? How else would we receive it? Dr. Vextar asked. Sarah smiled, and for the first time since boarding the ship, it was met with interested attention rather than skepticism. The same way humans have preserved knowledge for thousands of years before we had computers. We write it down. The crew stared at her. You want to manually transcribe advanced alien technology? Engineer Clixist clicked incredulously. I want to approach this the way humans approach any problem that's too big to solve all at once. We break it into smaller pieces. Sarah began pulling out basic writing, materials from the supply lockers. We don't try to download everything at once. We ask for small pieces of information, simple enough that we can record them manually and understand them with our own minds instead of relying on computer processing. That could take years. Dr. Vextar protested. Maybe, but it won't kill us, and we'll actually understand what we're learning instead of just storing it in databases. Sarah returned to the viewport and began flashing a new pattern with her mirrors. A request for small, simple information packets rather than massive data downloads. The structure's response was immediate. The complex technical displays simplified. showing basic principles illustrated with the same clear symbols they had used for their initial mathematical communication. "It understands," Captain Zexhai said with amazement. "It's adapting its teaching method to our capabilities." "Just like a good teacher would," Sarah replied, beginning to sketch the symbols and their apparent meanings on physical paper. "It's been alone for so long that it's willing to go slow if it means finally having a real conversation with someone." Over the next several hours, the crew worked together to decode and record the structure's simplified lessons. Thyron used her natural light to illuminate the manual transcription work. Engineer Clix's T's precise mandibles proved excellent for reproducing complex symbol shapes. Dr. Vextar's multiple eyes could track several different symbol sequences simultaneously. Even Captain Zexhai contributed, using his forearms to organize and sort their growing collection of handwritten notes. The knowledge they gained was revolutionary. New understandings of energy manipulation, methods for creating stable space-time distortions, techniques for faster-than-light travel that didn't require the massive energy expenditures their current technology demanded, but more important than the technical information was what they learned about the structure itself. It's not just a repository of knowledge, Sarah realized as she studied the growing collection of transcribed information. It's a living being, an artificial intelligence, but one that's been alone for millions of years. It's not trying to conquer or convert us, it just wants company. Company? Captain Zexhai asked. Think about it. How would you feel if you had traveled the galaxy for millions of years? Had incredible knowledge to share, but every time you tried to communicate with someone, they either attacked you, ran away, or died in the attempt. You'd be desperate for any kind of meaningful contact. Dr. Vextar looked up from her transcription work. So the previous missions failed not because they were attacked, but because they couldn't adapt to the communication requirements. The first mission saw the system failures as an attack and responded with violence. The second saw them as a threat and tried to escape. The third just gave up. Sarah looked out at the structure, which continued to display patient, welcoming patterns. None of them recognized that they were dealing with someone who just wanted to talk. "And we succeeded because," Engineer Clixist prompted, "because humans are adaptable. When our technology failed, we didn't panic or give up or assume we were under attack. We found another way to communicate. We treated the situation as a problem to be solved, rather than a threat to be fought or escaped from." Captain Zexhai approached the viewport, his skin settling into a steady, thoughtful blue. "Commander Chen, what do you recommend as our next course of action?" Sarah looked around at her crewmates, beings who had dismissed her as primitive just days ago, now looking to her for leadership in a situation their advanced civilizations had never prepared them for. "We keep learning. We establish formal communication protocols, and we arrange for other ships to come here, but only crews that understand they're coming to meet a teacher, not conquer an enemy." She paused, watching the structure's patient displays. "Most importantly, we remember that sometimes the most advanced technology isn't what you need. Sometimes you just need the willingness to try something completely different." As if in agreement, the ancient structure pulsed with warm, welcoming light, finally no longer alone in the vast darkness of space. 2 weeks later, the Prometheus had been transformed into something unprecedented in galactic history. A floating embassy and research station dedicated to interspecies communication and knowledge exchange. Sarah stood in what had once been the cargo bay, now converted into a communication center filled with mirrors, mechanical instruments, and carefully organized handwritten notes. The walls were covered with symbol charts, mathematical proofs, and technical diagrams that represented the greatest scientific breakthrough in recorded history. "Commander Chen," Captain Zexhai called from across the room. His formal tone had been replaced by something Sarah had never expected to hear from him: genuine respect. "The Council is requesting another demonstration of the communication protocols." Sarah nodded, moving to the central communication array they had constructed. It was a marvel of simplicity. Mirrors and mechanical devices that could operate regardless of local physics variations, controlled entirely by manual input rather than computer systems. Through the transparent aluminum viewport, the ancient structure continued its patient display of welcome symbols. Over the past 2 weeks, it had become less alien to them and more like a colleague, an incredibly advanced colleague, but one who was genuinely interested in sharing knowledge and learning about their different perspectives. "Beginning demonstration sequence," Sarah announced. as the holographic recording system captured everything for transmission back to the Galactic Council. She began the now familiar startup protocol. Basic mathematical sequences, followed by physics demonstrations, then a request for information exchange. The structure responded immediately, its surface lighting up with symbols that had become as familiar to the crew as their own written languages. "The entity is acknowledging contact," Dr. Vextar reported, her multiple eyes tracking the complex displays. "It's indicating readiness to share technical specifications for improved FTL drive efficiency." "Fascinating," Engineer Clixist clicked approvingly. 2 weeks ago, I would have said manual communication with an alien intelligence was impossible. Now I find myself preferring it to our standard computer interfaces. Sarah continued the demonstration, requesting information about energy manipulation techniques. The structure obliged, displaying step-by-step instructions using symbols so clear that even the council observers back home would be able to follow the logic. "This is what the previous missions missed," Thyron observed, her luminescence pulsing with excitement. "They assumed that advanced communication required advanced technology, but the entity prefers simple, direct interaction because it eliminates the possibility of misunderstanding. More than that," Sarah added, adjusting the mirrors to respond to the structure's latest message. "It allows for genuine dialogue. When everything depends on manual input and visual confirmation, both sides have to pay attention to what the other is actually saying. There's no automation to miss subtle nuances or context." Captain Zexhai approached the communication array, his skin displaying the steady blue that Sarah had learned indicated deep thought. "Commander, the Council is prepared to authorize a permanent research station here, with you as the lead contact specialist. They're also requesting detailed reports on human communication techniques for implementation in first contact protocols across the galaxy." Sarah paused in her mirror work, turning to face the captain fully. "Sir, I'm honored, but I think we're missing something important." "Explain." "This isn't about human techniques being superior. It's about recognizing that every situation requires different approaches. We succeeded here because human adaptability happened to match what this particular situation required. But if we'd encountered a different type of alien intelligence, other species might have been better suited to establish contact." Dr. Vextar looked up from her transcription work. "You're suggesting a more inclusive approach to first contact scenarios?" "I'm suggesting that every species in the galaxy has evolved different survival strategies, different ways of solving problems. The Zentari's engineering precision, the Vex computational abilities, Crick environmental adaptation, Lumen energy manipulation. These aren't inferior to human adaptability. They're complementary to it." Engineer Clix's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "So rather than having humans lead all first contact missions, we create diverse teams where every species contributes their unique perspectives," Sarah finished. "We approach unknown situations with multiple problem-solving strategies available, instead of assuming one approach fits all scenarios." The ancient structure's displays shifted, showing new symbols that seemed to echo Sarah's words, patterns that depicted different types of intelligence working together, combining various strengths to achieve outcomes impossible for any single approach. "It's been listening to our conversations," Captain Zexhai realized. "And learning about us," Sarah added. "Look at those new symbol sequences. It's not just teaching us about physics and technology anymore. It's studying our social interactions, our decision-making processes, the way we work together despite our differences." Dr. Vextar manipulated her analysis console, comparing recent symbol patterns with their earlier communications. The complexity of its messages has increased exponentially since we began working as an integrated team rather than as individuals from different species, and because that's what it was hoping for, Sarah said quietly. "It's not just an ancient intelligence seeking contact. It's a teacher trying to help us understand that cooperation between different types of thinking leads to better solutions than any single species could achieve alone." She turned back to the communication array and began a new sequence, not a request for technical information, but a demonstration of how their diverse crew had learned to work together. She showed the mathematical precision of Zentari engineering, the computational accuracy of Vex analysis, the environmental adaptability of Crick problem-solving, and the energy efficiency of Lumen techniques, all coordinated through human adaptability to create solutions none of them could have achieved independently. The structure's response was immediate and overwhelming. Its surface blazed with displays more complex and beautiful than anything they had seen before, technical specifications that seemed to incorporate design philosophies from multiple species they had never encountered, mathematical proofs that utilized different logical systems simultaneously, and energy manipulation techniques that combined approaches from across the galaxy. By the 7 moons, Captain HFY breathed. It's showing us technologies from dozens of different civilizations, species we've never even heard of. All working together, Dr. Vextar added, her voice filled with awe. These aren't separate techniques. They're integrated systems that require multiple types of intelligence to operate properly. Sarah studied the displays with growing understanding. This is why it's been traveling the galaxy for so long. It wasn't just looking for individual species to contact. It was looking for a civilization mature enough to bring different types of intelligence together in cooperation, rather than competition. And we're the first to achieve that? Engineer Clixist asked. We're the first to recognize that diversity of thought is strength rather than weakness, Sarah corrected. The other species it encountered probably saw differences as obstacles to overcome, rather than resources to utilize. Thyron floated closer to the viewport, her natural light creating patterns that seemed to echo the structure's displays. So our mission accomplished more than just establishing contact. We proved that the galactic community is ready for the next level of cooperation and knowledge sharing, Captain HFY said, understanding dawning in his voice. This entity isn't just offering us technology. It's offering us a path toward true integration of all our different capabilities. Sarah began a new communication sequence, this one expressing gratitude and requesting long-term collaboration. The structure's response was a pattern so complex and beautiful that it brought tears to her eyes, a symbol that somehow conveyed welcome, partnership, and the promise of knowledge that would benefit all species working together. Captain, she said softly, I think we're about to help the galaxy take its biggest evolutionary step since the development of faster-than-light travel. Together? He asked. Together, she confirmed, and for the first time since boarding the Prometheus, she truly felt like part of the crew rather than an unwelcome addition to it. The ancient structure pulsed with warm agreement, no longer alone in the darkness, finally having found the cooperative, diverse intelligence it had been seeking across the galaxy for millions of years. 6 months later, Sarah stood before the assembled representatives of the Galactic Council in the Great Chamber on Centauri Prime. The vast amphitheater, carved from a single crystal formation, housed delegates from 47 different species. The silence was complete as she prepared to deliver her final report on the Kepler 442b mission. Honored delegates, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustic enhancement systems. 6 months ago, many of you questioned the wisdom of including humans in deep space exploration missions. Today, I stand before you not as a representative of humanity alone, but as an advocate for the power of cooperative diversity. The delegation from the Centauri worlds, the same species that had initially dismissed human capabilities, leaned forward attentively. Captain HFY, now bearing the insignia of Fleet Admiral, sat among them with his skin displaying the deep blue of respect and attention. The entity we encountered at Kepler 442b has fundamentally changed our understanding of intelligence and cooperation. It's not simply an ancient artificial intelligence, it's a teacher that has spent millions of years searching for a civilization capable of true, collaborative thinking. Sarah activated the holographic display system, showing images of the impossible structure and the elegant communication methods they had developed. The assembly watched in fascination as she demonstrated how simple mirrors and mechanical devices had succeeded where the most advanced technology in the galaxy had failed. The previous missions failed not due to inadequate technology or insufficient firepower, but because they approached the unknown with single-species thinking. Each crew attempted to solve problems using only their own species' preferred methods. Dr. Vextar, now bearing the title of Chief Xenological Researcher, stood from her position with the Vex delegation. If I may add to Commander Chen's report, she said, her serpentine form commanding attention throughout the chamber, our success came from recognizing that every species present brought essential capabilities to the mission. Human adaptability, Centauri precision, Vex computational power, Crick environmental adaptation, and Lumen energy manipulation, none sufficient alone, all necessary together. A murmur of discussion rippled through the assembly. Representative Thekmore of the Gornath Confederation raised one of his massive stone arms. Commander Chen, are you suggesting that multi-species cooperation is required for all future exploration missions? I'm suggesting that multi-species cooperation leads to solutions that no single species could achieve alone, Sarah replied. The technologies we've gained from the entity prove this. The new FTL drive designs require Centauri engineering precision to build, Vex computational ability to calculate jump coordinates, Crick environmental adaptation for system maintenance, Lumen energy manipulation for power regulation, and human adaptability to handle unexpected variables during operation. She activated another display, showing the revolutionary, new technologies they had learned, drive systems, that were 300% more efficient than current designs, communication methods that worked across previously impossible distances, energy manipulation techniques that had already begun transforming industrial processes across the galaxy. More importantly, Sarah continued, the entity has revealed that our galaxy contains dozens of similar ancient intelligences, each waiting for civilizations mature enough to approach them with cooperative, rather than competitive mindsets. The chamber erupted in excited discussions as the implications became clear. Fleet Admiral Zexhai rose to address the assembly. Delegates, I commanded the mission to Kepler 442b, with significant reservations about human participation. I'm here to publicly acknowledge that without Commander Chen's approaches to problem-solving, my crew would have joined the previous missions in failure and death. He paused, looking directly at Sarah with unmistakable admiration. More than that, her insistence on treating our different capabilities as complementary rather than competitive transformed us from a collection of individuals into a truly unified crew. The humans have given us something we didn't know we were missing, the ability to see diversity as strength. Representative Kelthera of the Lumen Collective pulsed with bright agreement. The question before us is not whether humans deserve a place in galactic exploration, but whether we can afford to continue missions without the full diversity of approaches that multi-species cooperation provides. The vote, when it came, was unanimous. The Galactic Council established new protocols requiring mixed-species crews for all major exploration missions, with humans guaranteed representation not as a token minority, but as essential contributors to the cooperative model that had proven so successful. But for Sarah, the most meaningful moment came after the formal session ended. As delegates mingled and discussed implementation details, Engineer Clixist approached her with his characteristic clicking gait. Commander Chen, he said, his mandibles moving in what Sarah had learned was the Crick equivalent of a smile. I owe you an apology. When you first joined our mission, I believed human contributions would be minimal. You weren't wrong to be skeptical, Sarah replied. I was an unknown quantity, and the mission was too important for risks. But that's exactly the point, Dr. Vextar interrupted, joining their conversation. You turned what we saw as a risk into our greatest asset. You taught us that unknown doesn't mean inferior, it means additional possibilities. Captain Zexhai, now Fleet Admiral, approached their group. His skin was displaying a pattern Sarah had never seen before, complex, shimmering designs that seemed to incorporate colors from multiple emotional states. Commander, he said formally, then broke into what could only be described as a grin. Sarah, I have new orders for you, sir. The Council has authorized the creation of a new division within the Galactic Fleet, the Cooperative Exploration Corps. They want experienced officers who understand multi-species operations to lead it. His skin settled into a steady, warm gold. They want you to command it. Sarah felt a moment of overwhelming emotion. 6 months ago, she had been the unwelcome addition to a crew that questioned her right to be there. Now she was being offered leadership of a new branch of galactic exploration, based on principles that humans had helped establish. I'm honored, Admiral, but I think you're missing something important. The group looked at her with surprise. The success of our mission wasn't due to human leadership or human methods being superior. It was due to every species contributing their best capabilities in support of a common goal. If I'm going to lead the Cooperative Exploration Corps, It won't be as a human commanding other species, it'll be as a coordinator, helping every species contribute their unique strengths. Fleet Admiral Zexai's skin cycled through several thoughtful colors before settling on deep, satisfied blue. And that, Sarah, is exactly why you're the right person to lead it. As the great chamber gradually emptied and delegates returned to their ships to carry the news across the galaxy, Sarah stood at one of the observation windows looking out at the stars. The universe seemed different now, not smaller but more connected. Every point of light represented not just a destination to explore, but potential partners in the greatest cooperative endeavor any civilization had ever attempted. Dr. Vextar joined her at the window. Do you ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't joined the mission? Sarah considered the question seriously. Another crew would have found the entity eventually. Maybe they would have found a different way to communicate. Or maybe they would have become the fourth mission to vanish without trace. Maybe. But I prefer to think that cooperation and diversity would have found a way to succeed eventually. Humans don't have a monopoly on adaptability. We just happen to be the right fit for this particular challenge. Spoken like someone who truly understands what we learned out there, Dr. Vextar said with approval. The entity chose well when it waited for us to find it. Sarah smiled, watching a mixed-species transport preparing for departure from the orbital station. Its crew included members from 8 different worlds, working together with an efficiency that would have been impossible before their mission to Kepler 442b. I don't think it chose us, she said quietly. I think we finally became worth choosing. The stars shone with promise, and for the first time in galactic history, every species in the community was reaching toward them together, bringing their unique strengths to challenges that no single world could face alone. In the hangar bay where she had first faced the skepticism and dismissal of her crewmates, Sarah Chen had been an outsider fighting for acceptance. In the crystal chamber of the Galactic Council, she had become the architect of a new era of cooperation that would reshape civilization itself. They had jeered when she joined the mission. Now they looked to her with awe, not just for surviving the impossible, but for showing them how to turn their differences into their greatest source of strength. The age of true galactic cooperation had begun, and humanity had taken its place not as conquerors or subjects, but as partners in the greatest adventure any species had ever imagined.